Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think we'll get the show on the road.
Oh, yeah.
So, first of all, apologies for the technology once again. And on this occasion, the council's equipment is totally out of action. It just won't work at all. But thankfully, our guest speaker tonight has got his own kit along, and we're looking forward to what he has to say and what he has to show us. So, I'd like to introduce Alec Macleod to you all. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Stornoway Port Authority. And as some of you may know, he comes from the village of Knock, and his family have a long connection with Stornoway. His great-grandfather owned and skippered the sailing vessel Mornack, one of the most famous Zulu vessels of the time. Following a period of time working in Glasgow with a civil engineering company, Mr Macleod then worked with Fletcher Construction in Auckland, New Zealand, which included working on the America's Cup viaduct basin facilities. And then when he returned from New Zealand, he was working for a long-established civil engineering company, during which time he worked on a number of projects on the Stornoway Harbour, around the Stornoway Harbour. He started this employment with the Stornoway Port Authority as Chief Executive in July 2015, and he's taking on this role at a time which is particularly challenging for the Stornoway Port Authority, with the ambitious plans that lie ahead for the development of Stornoway Harbour. So without further ado, I'd like to just introduce you to Mr. Alec Macleod.
Thank you. I probably talk loud enough to have to not to use that. I mean, can you hear up the back, or do I need to put this on? Are you okay, Malcolm? Yeah? I do talk quite a lot. A couple of things about tonight. It's a talk rather than a lecture. I think lecture sort of, I'm not lecturing anyone, I'm not scolding anyone or anything. We've done a little bit of research on it. We haven't done anywhere near the research that some of the people in this room have done about Stornoway Harbour. Originally, when I was asked to do this, probably almost 2 years ago now, it seemed like a good idea at the time. Over the past 2 weeks, it didn't. It really, really didn't. And I've got quite a busy week, and in some ways I could have done without it, but no, it's good. I have to come and do these things. I do quite a lot of these talks to people about what we're doing in the harbour. I probably do, not quite this presentation, but much shorter ones, probably on average once a week. If it's not to politicians, it's to other groups around the town and things like that. I have one to do on Wednesday. That's to 200 cruise executives who are going to grill me afterwards for about 10 minutes. It's I don't know which one is worse, this one or that one. It's with regards to the people in the audience, there are definitely people in here who know more about it. I think Kathy Mackay's up the back, and that's scary for me actually doing something here if Kathy's in the room. Billy was phoning me on Friday saying, "Oh, I don't want to go along in case I actually get asked more questions than you, Alex." So it doesn't matter. I know that Kathy and Billy and Sandy know a lot more than me, but I'm just going to talk about some of the things that we're doing, and strangely some of the things that are quite similar that the Port Authority were trying to do in the past. So I'm just going to bypass that first screen because there's a wee summary of what we're doing, but I'll just go straight on to it. Okay, it's not brilliant pictures, this. It's a shame because we might struggle with some of the other ones later on. Are the lights able to go off at all? No, just that one maybe, no. It doesn't really matter. The Mornack, and not many people will know this, but yes, my great-grandfather had that fishing boat, but one of the interesting facts about it is in 1932, my family actually took the Port Authority to court because they damaged the boat. And at the time, I think the family were awarded looking at it here, £186 in damages, plus £300 in legal costs, and the Port Authority legal costs, the commission legal costs were £480 at the time. It's quite I'm surprised they gave me the job because I think Bury actually knew that at the time. Bewley likes going on about that because when I did say that to him, he says that's the last time anyone beat the Commission. Not too sure that's true. But anyway, I'll carry on a wee bit now. Going back to that one, the bit on the right, that's actually the plan that my grandfather actually drew up about the way the boat was tied up incorrectly, and that they actually took it to the court. So it was some of the evidence that they actually used there. Just going on a wee bit, that's a very, very old photo of Stornoway. I think you'll all have seen that. Because the first thing we're going to talk about is Goat Island and a lot of things that's happened there in the past. We just wanted to show, well, it's an island. It was an island for thousands of years up until 1949. One of the things about Goat Island, I don't know, but I don't know where it got goat from, because when you actually look at all the older drawings, it's Cool, C-O-U-L, island. Why it changed, I think it was just known, just habit, by popular name. But I do not know where the goat came from. Maybe someone at the end can tell us where it actually came from. The other thing about our port master plan, it wasn't the first one. This one's from almost exactly 100 years ago. That's the one that Lord Leverhulme did. It's got quite a lot of interesting stuff in it. In particular, now I have to try and figure out how this works. In particular, on here, one of the things that we put in our recent port master plan was a bridge or a dam, and I'll come to it later. It's very sensitive, this. Across the Bayhead estuary. Quite interesting that he had that in. As you can see on the other side of the harbour there, they've obviously the pier number 1 and the fish mart, Crum Street Quay, that's all. Pier number 2 was done, and one of the other 3 piers was done. A lot of the other buildings here weren't done. I'm not going to talk about them tonight, but they were rather grand ones. And that rather grand tower in the middle, roughly where the bus station is, I think, that was definitely not built. That picture sits in the Port Authority boardroom. It was a guy called Thomas Raffles Davidson, and he also did the plans for Port Sunlight that Lord Leverhulme did as well. Doesn't show Goat Island, but at the time in 1919 there was plans. So, next one. This one I'm going back to, and some of you people who know Stornoway a bit more. That's a plan from 1653 of a fort in Stornoway. The reason I bring that up is the wee square at the top left hand of the screen is what they're saying is a fort, another smaller fort on Goat Island. I'm scared to actually put the pointer onto it in case it goes onto another screen. But right at the top left, that's supposed to be a fort on Goat Island. Whereas the bit in the middle of the screen, that one is where the old Stornoway Castle is supposed to be. That one there, and that one there is out in Goat Island. That thing, and that actually comes from a book, I think it's 1909 W.C. Mackenzie. The reason we were looking at it, I'll come back down to it, is something where we're doing an Amity House. Now, Amity House is just straight down from the castle on the right-hand side, and I'll come back to that one later on as well. But primarily, the 2 reasons: Goat Island, it's sitting up there in 1653. And going on to W.C. Mackenzie's book, and you can't read this at all, can you? No. Basically, a fort on an island about a quarter of a mile from the town, probably called Goat Island in Stornoway Harbour. Basically, it was fortified on both sides because the locals were battling with the people on it, as well as protecting it from the other side as well. It's not very often that happens. It's usually just one side. But still talking about Goat Island, and I'll get to the more interesting bits in a wee minute. That's Newton, with Goat Island as an island. Don't know when that was. That's probably late 1800s or something like that. Then we come on to this one here. In 1891, they actually started looking at doing things in Goat Island. And what you have there, the long line on the left is a concrete breakwater they were going to build across the area. It dries out roughly from where the wee fish shop in Newton is, straight across to Goat Island Slipway. They were going to build a concrete breakwater there and a big pier on the outside of Goat Island, and then a pier all the way around the harbour to where that bit in the middle is, where it's the current ferry terminal. So we're certainly not the first people who were thinking about digging out and doing things in Goat Island. So that's 1891. The next time we start staying Goat Island, and that's in 1919 when Lord Leverhulme started some of his grand plans. Now, it wasn't in the other master plan, but 1919, if you actually look at the line, this is where it gets quite interesting. But that line here, along there, that's almost exactly the same line that we're going to be building the wall on for our new marina. It's kind of strange, but when you actually look at engineers sort of 100 years ago, they were really, really smart people. We're spending a lot of money, fancy computers and everything. They didn't have any of that, yet they still knew exactly where to build things. It's quite incredible, really. And that's from 1919. That's roughly the line of the causeway, where it was actually built in 1949 as well. Carrying on from that, and no, I'll go back the way. In the middle of there, just beside the P in proposed causeway, you're seeing 2 or 3 wrecks in there. It's actually marked on the chart there. It's interesting I say chart. I used to call them all plans, but now I've been in the Port Authority for 3 years. It's charts. I've been ticked off rather a lot about that the last 2 or 3 years. I'm quite proud of myself saying chart there, actually. What you find on here, if you actually look at Goat Island, you're actually seeing 2 wrecks out there on that plan there. There's 2 reasons for showing this. One is the wrecks out at Goat Island, which look much clearer on my screen, by the way. And just to see what's happening in Cromwell Street Quay. Cromwell Street Quay, you're just seeing, I think there is a wall there, but it's very close to Cromwell Street at the time, or Dempster Street as it was called then. So just carrying on from that, that's roughly about the same time as that Lord Leverhulme plan. And the other interesting fact that we found in the drawing, down there in the bottom, that's just out past the mouth of the Creed, Palachar I think it is. So they were going to build a quarry there to take the rock over to Goat Island. And it's just kind of strange because, you know, we wouldn't even dream of that, doing that today, let alone 100 years ago. If they'd done that at the time, Tosses Quarry wouldn't be there today. There'd probably be a big, huge hole at the mouth of the Creed. It actually might make things easier for us building Deepwater Port if there was a quarry there. And then carrying on from that, the same thing. This is that is a plan and a drawing, not a chart, this one. This is actually showing what they were actually planning on doing. They'd actually done the drawings for it, they'd done the sizes, but this drawing is showing what they were proposing up the top. But down there at the bottom, again, room for expansion. So they were actually going to build a sort of a box. I'll stand up and do it. They were actually going to build a box, so that's what they were going to build. That's the pier along there. That's the road out to Goat Island, and that's the future expansion in there. You know, and 100 years later, that's the bit that we can actually dig. We can't dig that just now, and we can't dig that just now. So the fact that they are able to find that out 100 years ago quite easily, it's quite incredible, really. Then we move on from there. I don't want to go too fast. Moving on from there, from 1919, obviously that didn't happen. Then 1949, basically they started actually doing Goat Island. So this drawing shows the plans in for the 1947, I think, Harbour order. So they did the causeway out to Goat Island, they did the slipway out to Goat Island, and at the same time, they were doing a massive extension to number 1 pier. I think that what people have to understand, we're planning on doing a lot of work just now. There's times in the past they've done just as much work, because these 2 projects at that time, that was a lot of work at the time. But the fact that 2 of them are going at exactly the same time is quite interesting. So just that picture here, the reason we have this one up is you can actually see the cranes working on pier number 1, and out at Goat Island, that sort of black line can only be the bottom half of the causeway. So they've actually stopped, you know, they've caught it in just sort of a mid-tide level. So if they'd caught that picture later on in the day, you'd probably have seen diggers or something like that actually working on it. But that's the first sort of picture that I've seen of the actual causeway halfway up. And then next picture, that one, I don't know when that one's from, but that's probably just a picture from the 60s. It's just showing the Goat Island slipway with just a slipway on it, and one wee building at the back. It's showing quite a few boats on the wee beach out at Goat Island. It's showing the causeway. We only found that one the other day, and it's showing Battery Park with not a lot of houses down there. And that's today, or recent. You can see on that drawing, roughly again, the lines. You can see a dark shade, a dark line in there. That's where Lord Leverhulme was going to dig out on one side. Once you get past this stage, it's hard rock. You can't dig it. I think there are one or two people in the audience who understand what you can and cannot dig here. Well, you cannot dig this half of Newton Basin, which is why we're actually concentrating right in the middle. So anyway, that's where we are. That comes back onto today. Why are we doing Goat Island? Well, Curragh Marina, when that was built in 2014, it was full up within probably months rather than years or anything like that, a lot quicker. The other side with Goat Island, we've been looking for a covered slipway for a long, long time. Most of the other larger ports have a very large shed for taking fishing boats straight into from the slipway. We don't have that. In reality though, we're not going to be able to build a shed that's going to take all the boats going to the slipway. That would be, I think we get rather a few complaints if we actually put a boat shed out there that would cover everything out there. The Newton Basin as well, it needs tidying up. The other thing as well, the fish processing buildings need upgraded. And basically, they've been trying to do something out here for over 100 years now. Now's the time to do it. We need a bigger marina. We need a boat shed. And we need it to be improved quite dramatically. So basically, what are we doing out there? There's a 70 berth marina. We're going to do 10,000 square meters of reclamation area. We're going to do a wee slipway just to the middle there, and that's just a public slipway. So it'll have pontoons down the side of it, so it'll be a much, much safer slipway if people want to reverse a boat and trailer down it. It'll be a lot easier to actually get down, and a lot safer. It just means you can take the boat down, tie it onto the pontoons, and then go and move your car out of the way. On top of that, we're going to have a proper boat lift. I'll show you that in a wee minute. When I started the Port Authority 3 years ago, we had a public meeting. Some people were quite vocal. Some of them are in here, but they were quite right to be quite local because we needed a proper boat hoist and we needed a bigger marina. So it just shows you that we do actually listen when we actually have these public meetings. The Shellfish processing facility, we're working with Macduff out there to try and upgrade that facility. Basically, they're trying to get into international markets. They can't do it with their current design. There's quite a lot of work needs to get done to that, and it'll be a much, much improved facility. Basically, once we have a marina that's got 150 boats in it, there's going to be a catalytic effect on other things. You'll be able to have people who can actually do work on boats, people can do work on sails, they can create businesses from all these type of things. There's working on engines. It's going to be a lot easier to do stuff in the leisure trade. The other side of it is we'll probably move, I've got to be careful how I say this, it's not social cleansing as such, but we'll be moving the less sociable people from the town area out to this marina, because we want the sociable people in town to interact with our visitors around the marina along Cromwell Street Quay. It's really, really important because our visitors like talking to people, local people, about what to see and where to go. So we can't move all our locals out to this one. We've got to have a good mix between them. I shouldn't have said social cleansing because he's recording us over there. Normally I can say that in a private audience, but you might have to edit that out. where are we with Goat Island? There's been a few pictures on Facebook in the last week. We've been taking out some of the old moorings, and we've been moving some of the older boats. We've been asking people to take their boats out, and we've actually been digging more holes in there just to see the effect of when you dig the hole, where some more of the rock is and where the soft material is. The other side of it is Harbour Revision Order. That's like the marine equivalent of planning. That's currently been approved by Transport Scotland. It's going to be signed this week, so that's that one ticked off and off the list. The marine licence has been submitted, and all the period of objections has passed. There hasn't really been any objections, so realistic approval we'll have in March. We've awarded the construction contract to a contractor, and he's going through a lot of plans. We're going to start talking to the residents a wee bit more in March, so that they understand how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it. And yes, there will be disruption, but as long as we tell people when and where this disruption is going to happen. We're still working on a wee bit of purchase of land, but we don't expect an issue with that because we have an agreement in principle from both things, from both Crown Estate and Stornoway Trust, and the funding is all in place. We got that just before Christmas. What I'd like to see here is that, this is a good example of the council, the trust, HIE and ourselves all working very, very closely together. We've worked very closely together to sort out the funding, to sort out what we have to put out there. They've been, HIE have been quite hard on us. The council have been working with us. I'm saying HIE have been hard on us. They've also been working closely with us. So it's very much a joint effort, this project, in relation to the funding and the progression of the project. But, it's good, and I'd like to think at the end of the day this is going to greatly improve an area of the town that's maybe, it hasn't looked so good over the last couple of years. Lifting boats, so we're putting on a new yacht lift. That's the way they used to do it a long, long time ago. Then I think we moved on from that to the very big boats on the likes of South Beach. And I think it's only when you see pictures like that just to see how big the old Sulu types from last century boats actually were. They were huge, so they had to be beached all the time just to do work on them. Back 60 or 70 years later, I think my harbour master would freak if he saw that today, and any health and safety inspector would freak if they saw that today. I don't know who it is, and I hope no one's in the room. No? But yeah, that's not safe, and the two guys in the boat, yeah, okay. And there's lots of arms waving and stuff like that, and I think that's the old Harbour crane. Again, it's just frightening just looking at that. Where that can go, well, on the left, that's a Harbour crane inside a ship. That's not supposed to happen either. But I don't think it's the same Harbour crane. The one on the right is how we've been doing it the last couple of years. It's not brilliant, and the crane drivers hate doing it. So that's what we're going to put into Goat Island. It's a proper yacht lift that goes out on a horizontal lift. You see the gentleman down below, you see the size of it. He doesn't even come up to the red line on the vessel. So that's a big yacht lift. That's a 75, 80 ton yacht lift. That's the same as the one in Venice Marina. That'll make it much safer for vessels to be lifted out and stored out at Goat Island in the future, and for people to do work on. A lot safer. And it won't take the biggest fishing boats in the harbour, but it'll take most of the fishing boats in this harbour. And in reality, most of these fishing boats are actually getting smaller. So it'll take all lesser vessels and most of the fishing boats. So we move on from there. Deepwater Port. Why are we doing it? In reality, most of our infrastructure, apart from the ferry pier, is over 100 years old. I'm not saying it's bad. In reality, the number one pier and Esplanade Pier, we're quite astounded with how good they actually are. there's another 100 years left in them. There'll be repairs along the way. But in reality, the cruise market now, we cannot accommodate some like 80% of the market. And it's only getting worse. Even the small expedition vessels are getting bigger. And within a couple of years, we'll be able to accommodate even less of them. We're restricted to 156 meters just now. And that's nothing when you actually look at cruise ships in a modern environment. The reason that this is happening now and not happened in the past is that the cruise ships, they have got bigger, but the cruise industry in the UK has just taken off hugely over the last 10 years. There is an opportunity for us to build something on the back of the cruise industry that wasn't here 10 years ago. It definitely wasn't here 20 years ago. There is an opportunity here today whereby we can justify a development and pay for a development on the back of the cruise industry. That's why we keep going on about the cruise industry. That's the important one. But on top of all of that, if we're going to build anything, we're going to build a multifunctional berth. So it'll be able to do a lot more work out there. One of the things, I'll come back onto the Arnish pier in a wee minute, but you know, we've got a good sheltered harbour. We hopefully can get most vessels in the world, although not too sure they'll all be quite confident about it. And you know, for thousands of years, the location of our harbour and the shelter has been our attraction. It still is. Going on about Arnish, that's Arnish before they started the development. There's nothing there. That's hugely different to the way it is now. And just showing you, there's a huge area that was infilled there in the 70s. That's Arnish when it's almost complete. That's Arnish with the rig in it. The other thing I would say about the Arnish site, people think it is a deep water berth. It isn't. It's actually a very, very shallow berth. It's a very heavy duty pier. But because it's so shallow, there are so many restrictions on it that it causes us a huge amount of problems. A vessel that would normally come in with one load of steel into Arnish, into another facility elsewhere, will have to come in 3 or 4 loads up here into the current Arnish pier. So it's restricting the development of that site. If we manage to do deep water port, it's going to give a lot of extra plus factors to that Arnish yard. A huge amount of extra. Not too sure that we'll ever get a rig in, but I'm not saying it's not an unreasonable thing for us not to be able to get a rig in there. Going on about master plans. Found this one in the office a few weeks ago. I think this was done when the ferry pier was done in 1996, 97. They were showing oil rigs on the outside of Arnish. I don't think that was ever feasible. It's just too rough out there. They were showing vessels. I think there's 2 or 3 250-meter long vessels over the far side there. I don't think they'd ever fit. So someone got the scales very, very wrong when they were doing this plan. And I hope the person's not in here. But you know, the idea is good. And the idea isn't much different from what we're planning on doing. But what we've actually got is we've gone a lot further on it. And it's quite real what we're actually doing. Difficult to see this one, but this is another one from the 90s, what the council, I think, were calling West Harbour. The bit on the top, that's where they were going to build a fuel jetty, and that's where they were going to put a ro-ro for the ferry. And that's the current pier out at Arnish. And they were going to build a massive industrial estate in the hills behind the wee power station out at Arnish. There's a lot of good logic to that, especially the industrial estate out the back. But that, in reality, is not much different to what we're doing, except we're doing it on a much bigger scale. And we're making it multifunctional. At the end of the day, we want big vessels like that, although you might not be able to see it properly here. I can't put it in. That's the oil giant too. I think that vessel could only get in on the high tide, and it could only lift a light load. In reality, it couldn't come in and take a heavy load in and out of Arnish because the current pier is not suitable. When we build our future berth, like that, we will hopefully be able to take anything in. That front berth there is That's a 300 metre long cruise ship. I'm going to go quickly onto another slide. It's just got bigger. That's a 360 metre long cruise ship. That is the Oasis of the Seas, or one of these vessels. It's 360 metres long. That's the biggest one in the world at this moment in time. There is no reason that that vessel cannot come into Stornoway. It won't come in, it doesn't really come around the UK yet, but they reckon within 10 years that thing could be coming into Stornoway. 5,000 passengers on it. It's going to swamp the town a little, but I don't think we should say no to it. There are too many good things that could come out of it. At the same time, that picture there is roughly what we're proposing. There's a freight ferry berth in it, there's a heavy lift pad on it for any heavy lifts going out for craneage and for barges going in and out of Anish. There's huge areas for development. If the wind farms actually go ahead on this island, you're going to have a very, very large berth. You're going to have a lot of cheap power. The businesses that can develop because of a alongside berth and cheap power, well, we don't really know, but there's no question about it, it will attract a lot of business. And we're actually putting a link road from our development round to Anish so that they can take big modules from Anish and offload them onto barges or ships at our new port. Moving on to the sort of more marine side of it, and oh blast, very, very sensitive this. That there is a revised chart showing roughly what we're going to dredge. We've been advised to dredge down to 10 metres. We were going to go to 9.5 metres, but it's strange. When we went to go and talk to some of our potential customers, they said because 10 metres the colour changes to white. So when you initially look at a chart, instead of looking at a lot of blue at 9.5, it's first impressions, it's perception. There's a lot of white on that chart. That's what they want to see. It'll be 10.5 metres alongside the berth and 10 metres on the way in. Something I've learned about tides since I started in the port. The cruise ships, we've been trying to explain to some of them, and some of them don't actually get it, but the tides in Stornoway, the spring low water tides only happen at 1:30 in the afternoon. So in reality, the lowest tides can only happen at 1:30. So therefore, if the ship comes in the morning, which all cruise ships do, and it leaves last thing at night, as long as we have the berth a little bit deeper than the channel in, we're okay. It's kind of strange, and I'm not going to go into the details of the tides because I don't understand it, but it's complicated. But anyway, 10.5 metres alongside and the channel in. The circle that's shown there is just what they would call either a turning circle or turning triangle. We have different terminology when we go to see the different customers. But we saw one in London about 3 weeks ago, and he likes more of a triangle than anything else. That's a 450 metre circle. So they seemed quite happy with 50 metres at either end of it, of the vessel. And that's just in the 10 metre line. There is a little bit more flexibility to go a little bit further north as well on the higher tides. Again, where are we? We've actually got the Harbour revision order done for this. Again, it's another one that's getting signed off this week. We have a marine licence. We don't expect that through until, we've said March there, but in reality it'll be May. And the planning permission for the access road, there's a wee access road. We don't need planning permission for much, but the planning permission, that'll happen over the next sort of 6 months. We've actually awarded a design contract for this work. I don't even want to say how much it is, but it's rather a lot of money. But it just shows you just how serious we are to actually do it. But they're actually doing the detailed design of this project right now. And it's even more complicated than we thought. When we went into the harbour to do boreholes, you all saw the wee jacket barge that was working in the harbour last year. When we did that, we were expecting to see rock, hard rock, 20 metres under the surface. In reality, we found hard rock in one location 70 metres down, which means that we can't put bearing piles down 70 metres, and that causes a lot of problems and a lot of rethinking of how we're actually doing this. So it's quite complicated. Then when we move further into the design, Yes, we find that all the material can be dredged, so we can reuse all the dredged material, but then we find layers of silt 20 meters down that are affecting the design at the toe of the piles. It's engineering stuff that I don't understand, but we have clever people working on it. Incidentally, Wallace Stone, the senior partner of the company who are doing the design, they were up against a company from Holland and a company from Denmark. The senior partner lives in Bernera, you know, John Portier. So it's good that it's kept kind of local, although their office in Glasgow is dealing with most of the design, but John is actually, you know, very involved with the project. In relation to funding, High have done all their due diligence. They're quite happy with it. So they're going to give us funding for it. We have to put an application into Scottish Government in the next couple of months. We're quite confident. We've been working with them now for about 18 months to 2 years on this funding. We're finding quite an innovative and clever way of doing it. They're happy with it. We're happy with it. We just have to get it finally approved over the next sort of 6 months. We're quite confident. In relation to the islands deal that you hear about, the Deepwater Port is the central part of the Hebrides Islands deal. So that gives us even more confidence that this is actually going to go ahead. I'll carry on a wee bit more about Deepwater Port. Give you an idea. Why is Stornoway popular with cruise industry? Well, cruise industry, a lot of it's to do with itineraries. A cruise ship leaves a port in an evening and arrives in another port the following morning, which means it's got 12 hours to sail. Now, very, very simply, 12 hours at 20 knots is 240 nautical miles. So that's the maximum they can do on an overnight trip. They can, and basically the way they look at it, ideally they want to go somewhere between 200 and 300 miles away from their last port in an overnight journey. At the moment, they cannot go anywhere in Scotland from Greenock. So because Kirkwall is too far away, and there's no other berths on the west side of Scotland that these very large cruise ships can go to. So when you actually look at our distances, we're 260 from Greenock, 240 from Belfast, 234 from Lerwick, 150 from Kirkwall, 200 from Invergordon, 220 from Tórshavn. So we can all sail on that in an overnight trip. That's why they like us, and that's why they want to come in. If they're going to Kirkwall, they have to leave Glasgow on a Tuesday afternoon, and they can't get into Kirkwall until a Thursday morning. They can still do that, but also call into us on the Wednesday and get a full day in Stornoway on the Wednesday. That's what makes it attractive, and that's why it's a good location. The reason we have Reykjavik and Hamburg in there, what the cruise industry call an ocean voyage, which is an overnight as day sailing and another overnight, the ideal distance is 700 nautical miles. Well, we're 660 or 670 from Reykjavik. It's a perfect distance from Reykjavik, and it's also the perfect distance from Hamburg. So itinerary-wise, we work it really, really well. We're also, I think, 700 nautical miles from Dover, going around the east coast as well. 800 miles as well. So we've got a lot of plus factors in our location. That comes back to what I was saying about sheltered harbour and location. That's why it's actually so important for us. The figures on the left, Stornoway, in this year, we're expecting 10,000 cruise ship passengers. Orkney and Kirkwall are getting 160,000. And each passenger, they reckon, spends £46 in the local economy. And the Port Authority in Orkney get £2.5 million. £10 million goes into Orkney. We get £200,000 or £300,000. The Port Authority, we don't even get 100,000. Because they don't come alongside, so we don't get the dues coming alongside. So it gives you an idea of how we can justify how much money we're spending, because there's good income for the Port Authority, but there's huge benefits in the local economy between buses, tourists, shops in the town, all the local tourist destinations, the Calney Stones, places like that can charge for more. We tell people that you could actually build a distillery in the castle grounds. If you got 50,000 people walking past it, and just 10,000 of them call in at £10 a head, it pays three people's wages. just at 30, 35,000 pounds a head. That's what it can actually do. There are quite big opportunities out there for people. So, and there's a comment there at the bottom that we actually say. I'll go to that first just so you understand what I mean. Orkney and Shetland, they already have that. They also have oil. So they're exporting oil, black gold, we're exporting black pudding. There's a huge difference in an economy here. Huge, huge difference. But that's the way we are. They've got huge... When you actually look at Orkney and Shetland, we're moaning because we don't have ferry capacity to take stuff into the island. Orkney and Shetland are both moaning because they can't get their exports out of both their islands. Lerwick, it's fish. Their freight ferry is full up of fish half the time. And in Orkney, their freight ferry is full up of cows. But we're the other way around. We have to do something so that money's coming into the island instead of going out all the time. So there's huge jobs potential here, because it's not just cruise, it's all the other things we can do around Anish. And as I said earlier on, there are industries that can be developed. There are cheap power and a big alongside berth. Our location again, oil industry off the north and the west coast of Scotland. We'll be ready for it if it happens. If it happens. It might take a few years, but at least we'll be ready for it. Not too bad. So, I'm going to leave Deepwater Port. We're quite excited about it, and in one form or other, it's going to happen. It will actually happen in the next few years. Some of the other things we're going to do, and we said that in our port master plan, but we hadn't really decided what we do as of yet. But Cromwell Street Quay, ultimately that used to be, well, I'll go on to it in a wee minute. A long, long time ago, you see that drawing here, top left, Cromwell Street Quay wasn't there. There was just a street and a beach effectively down there, and you can see that in that drawing there. I'll actually go up. That is the wall, and it's just at the edge of the road. And basically, this is before it was dredged out or anything, but there's boats probably almost to the trust office there, I would say. That's the way it was a long time ago. The way we feel Cromwell Street Quay should be the central heart of the town, and if we're going to take this amount of visitors into the town, we believe that Cromwell Street Quay should be spruced up and it should look a lot better. We're not too sure yet what, but we'll be out talking to people about this over the next few years. But just carrying on with Cromwell Street Quay, that's a little bit later. The quay has actually been extended down a little, but it's still nowhere near the distances that it is actually today. And carry on down. This one's in here. That's more like North Beach Quay. But what we liked about this one, and we keep looking at it, is how clean and tidy Cromwell Street Quay is, and how impressive that would look today if we had cruise ship passengers and other visitors around the town. We genuinely believe that something has to be sorted out in Cromwell Street Quay to make it safe and attractive for visitors to actually walk down there. And we're going to work on it. Moving on to probably, I think that's the 60s. It's beginning to look a little bit less attractive, but maybe that's because it was in colour. I don't know. And then in the 70s, this is when architecture really spoiled things, I have to say. And again, I hope there's no architects in here that were involved in that, but these buildings are long gone now. And at the time, they would probably look good. And you can see the traffic along there, used to speed along there. Yeah, it could be quite dangerous. But just at the end of Cromwell Street Quay, we're looking at doing, I think in the plans that we had, and the plans that a lot of other people had in the past, either a bridge or a dam or something up there to impound the water up in the Bay Head estuary. We're working with a local architect who says that these stepping stones were just at the end of Cromwell Street Quay, going right across to the castle grounds. So he's using that theme to build on it, to try and figure out a way. And one of the things that he wants to do, and anyone who knows this architect will figure out straight away who it is, because he doesn't like straight lines. Well, none of them like straight lines. But that's the end of Cromwell Street Quay. That's the road going on to Cromwell Street. basically, and this is a few years away yet, because who knows where the money for this one is coming from. We want to create a dam across here, with a weir here, but just with a wee bridge across the weir, but we want to put a wee lock in here. The lock will allow boats to be lifted up and taken up there as well. So it'll create another impounded area. What this will actually do is, it'll make the top of the Bay Head estuary end of Cromwell Quay look good. You know, because the water will be impounded halfway up all the time. And you can put more pontoons in there as well. We asked the sailing club if they'd want to do sail training in there, but the wind is awful, so they don't want to do it. But people getting taught canoes and stuff like that, it'll be very safe in there. But it's an attraction, and it'll bring people straight from the castle, straight into the town, and what we think is the heart of the town, which will be Cromwell Street Quay as well. And again, we're working on the council to try and make Cromwell, what are we going to do with Cromwell Street Quay? We're trying to work with them to create a nice environment for tourists and things like that. So, I'll carry on. Amity House, a couple of things. It changed from Esplanade House to Amity House. Where was the Esplanade? Like, this comes back to what I said earlier on. There is logic when I come to this, by the way. The Esplanade is a space between a fort and the surrounding country. Now, we were, or may be doing an extension to Amity House, but the problem with Amity House, once you start digging around this town, you find things. In there, at the top there, you can't read that on there. Some 8 years, this is W.C. Mackenzie's book again. And basically, this is from 1919, he says, some 8 years ago, the remains of rubble work, about 8 feet thick, were found about 2 or 3 feet from the surface in the course of some drain repairs behind Esplanade House. Well, we didn't know that before we started digging there. But we found it. And the problem with finding things up here is that once the archaeologists get a hold of it, they want to start looking more into it. So that's actually what they actually believe is actually in the car park to the rear of Amity House. This is what they're finding. There's a wall like that and another wall like that. So they actually believe, and when we looked into W.C. Mackenzie's book a wee bit further, there's quite a lot of interesting stuff in there. He believes that there was a tower in that location of Amity House maybe 200 or 300 years ago. We don't know, but because it's not in any actual pictures. But they actually believe that there was a Cromwellian tower, as well as a Cromwellian fort, there was a Cromwellian tower, and they reckon it was probably built roughly where Amity House is today. The likelihood is, and some people I know will definitely be happy, is the likelihood is that we're not going to cover that up, and we'll figure out another way to accommodate more people in our office at some point. That's Britannia in Stornoway. That's another Britannia in Stornoway. The reason I'm actually only putting that up there is there's that crane again, which I really don't like. When we actually, you can't see that either, I'm sorry. But the reason that we wanted this one up was it's a drawing of Britannia that we found in, a proper drawings of Britannia, showing the lengths, the distances and all that. And you'll find that when you arrive in a port, you'll send the drawing in advance sort of thing. We were just quite kind of excited to find it when we go through. There's millions of drawings in Amity House, a lot of history in there. So. And then I'm just going to finish off a couple of things. Trustport. We're not part of the public sector. We're not a private company either. It's an independent statutory body. It's quite unique. We don't have a company number or anything. We prepare accounts, which they're open to the public. They don't go to Companies House. That causes other problems because we don't have a credit limit either. We don't have a credit rating. It's quite funny. The board has to be suitable for current requirements. A lot of people don't realise when it changed from the Pier and Harbour Commission to Stornoway Port Authority, it wasn't just a name change. It was quite a big change in relation to Harbour Commissioners changing to Port Authority board members. Quite different roles. And I think maybe some of the problems that the Port Authority had in the past was probably as a result of that, these changes not being developed quickly enough. But it is quite different, the roles of the board members under the Commission and the roles of the board members today. And just going back to our port master plan, the port needed a long-term strategy. Essentially now, when a board member comes on, or any new employee comes into the harbour, or when we're advertising for new people, they know exactly where we're going. It's so much easier for people if they know exactly what we're going to be doing. The board members don't come in, they don't need to invent a strategy anymore. There is a strategy there. We can tinker with a strategy, that's fine. But there is a strategy there that we're going forward. We've done a huge amount of consultation with. Not everybody's going to be happy with it, but the vast majority of the community, we actually believe, is actually quite comfortable with what we're actually doing. The three statements at the bottom, I could actually turn around. I've been quite bullish here and saying that we will. It's not a case of we may be. We actually genuinely believe we will be the economic driver of the local economy. I actually say this to politicians all the time because they like hearing this, but we genuinely believe that. And ultimately, what I said there about exports, Orkney and Shetland export more. Up until we can be more sustainable, it's going to be very difficult for our island to survive. We do need to be more sustainable. We believe our projects will actually make it more sustainable. Ultimately, as well, we've got a lot of new people in the Port Authority, got a new harbour master, and that's why, these cranes, he really wouldn't like that. That's one of his big things in there. We want to operate high standards, good people, very efficient, and very safe. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. Any questions as well?
Yes, we'll open it up to some questions now from the audience.
Alex?
Hi.
I hear on the news this evening that February's been the warmest day on record.
Yep.
And the last 4 years have possibly been the warmest ever on record. So the question will be, what will be the effect of climate change, currently predicted 1.5 degrees or more, and the rise in sea temperature creating a metre or so rise in sea levels on the SPA return on investments and the ice-free northern route?
In relation to, if you actually look at pier number 1 and pier number 3, I think there's a 3/4 of a metre difference in height. You can't actually see it, but it's either 3/4 of a metre, I can't remember offhand. But we've factored all of these things into our deepwater port development as well, and for the Goat Island development. And I think our deepwater port development will actually be a metre higher than pier number 1. So it'll still be there, but the town's going to be underwater, so I'm not actually too sure. I'm not too sure how we survive at that point, but yeah, we have done that. In relation to sort of other routes that's developing, this berth will be able to take, not any vessel in the world, but it'll be able to take a much bigger vessels than we can just now. In some ways it's quite scary what size of vessels we'll be able to have in here. And that oasis of the seas, we've been talking to Royal Caribbean, and it'll be interesting to see their viewpoint of it, but we genuinely believe we'll be able to get these very, very large vessels in. And there'll be other container ships, heavy lift vessels and stuff like that we'll be able to get in. Big tankers and stuff like that, limited, because we will never have tugs to move them, and not too sure we'd want them in there anyway. That might cause a wee bit of a problem. Big bit of a problem, actually.
I think, Alec, developing a deepwater port for the big cruise ships and that other providers in the island need to move forward, because one of these ships, we can't put 30 buses to Calumet at the same time. So they've got to move as well. To be fair, that's where we'll work. We're trying to work with the council and HIE, and to be fair, for the way it actually works out, the shore excursions are organised by specialist shore excursion companies. They're not organised by cruise ships. They've got special companies actually organise them. We have actually one here tonight. It's not in here, but they're actually meeting the tour guides tonight, and they're going round the island tomorrow. And we had there's 3 companies generally. The other second company was here last week. So they're coming here, they're understanding, and we're talking to them and saying, well, we have to find innovative ways of actually doing things. And one of the things I have to do in this
the presentation I've got on Wednesday, which is scaring me more and more now, we tell them about our current shore excursions, which are very popular. But the most people we've ever got on shore excursions here is about 800. In the future, well, no, not in the future, Orkney just now, they've put out over 2,000 people on shore excursions. So we need to be up there. We have to come up with innovative ways of getting people on excursions. They don't have to go on buses. And we've had people up looking at the island, and I'll quite happily say it, there's some things that we do not recognise as cultural immersion, is the way the cruise ships like to say it, because they want to come ashore and find out, well, what are the people, what are they really like? Well, our unique culture here, we don't tell people about the Gaelic heritage or the Norse heritage. You'd arrive here and not know anything about it. We do not promote it at all. And in relation to Gaelic, even Scottish government are asking, well, what about Gaelic tourism? What are we doing about it? Nothing, because they're not selling Gaelic. I've got to be careful how I say this now, but they're not selling Gaelic enough, whereas we genuinely believe that there's Gaelic cultural events we can put on that's going to be very attractive to American, English and German tourists. We have to find ways of actually doing that. We had someone up here last year who looked at the castle, saw all the empty rooms in the castle during the day, and he says, you can put on shows in here. You can put the Highland dancers on in here. You can have people doing Gaelic singing in here. You can have people doing Gaelic poetry in here. You can sell it. These are the opportunities available, and it's a chance to sell Gaelic and for Gaelic to make money out of it. So we just have to be clever about doing it. But it's a case of working together, council, High, and everyone to try and get these things out there. They're big opportunities.
I've got one question in relation to the Deepwater port, and it's the proximity of the port to the mouth of the River Creed and the possible threat on the migration of Atlantic salmon.
I don't want to tell you how much we spent on the environmental stuff, but it's a six-figure sum. Well, that tells you. The environmental impact assessment we did for Goat Island and for Deepwater Port was quite extensive. They're not concerned. They genuinely believe that if we design this properly, they've done sedimentation analysis, and they've done quite a lot, and they don't think it shouldn't be any effect. They're quite happy. But there's been a huge amount of environmental work done over the last, possibly I think, year and a half, and they're covered with that.
Also, I've got a couple of comments on two of your slides early on in the presentation. In one of the slides, the Raffles Davidson one.
Yeah, I'll go back to it.
I'll go back to that one.
See, we have TV screens in the Port Authority, and it's so much easier to see it than on here. That one.
You mentioned the tower to the back end of number 3 pier. That, in fact, was Lord Beaton's vision of the location of the Lewis War Memorial.
Okay.
And it turned out that's not where the Lewis War Memorial was going to be. And also, you had a colour slide which was taken from somewhere just over Battery Point.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an absolute cracker, because it shows very clearly the layout of some of the old buildings of the RNR at Battery Point, right down at the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never seen that one before.
Okay. Yeah, we just found that one in the Port Authority archives this week. There's actually more to it, I think.
Yeah.
I've actually had to cut part of it off, so there's a wee bit more to it. So yeah, we found that one very interesting, actually.
Any other questions?
One final question for you. I've raised this with you before. You can answer it for the sake of the audience. Newton Basin Marina will be within the MSD from the centre of town.
It depends maybe how old you are and how much you've had in the crit or something like that. MSD, just so you know, MSD is maximum staggering distance, and a lot of the yachties like to know just how far it is to get to their from McNeil's to Newton Marina, but it's within sort of depends on how old you are, really. I'm sure you could still do it, Morris.
Thanks, Alec. very, very interesting talk, and I'm just so pleased that so many of these ideas are coming to fruition after such a long time in discussion. One of the things that have been talked about around the town in relation to cleaning up the place are the gas tanks and the oil tanks. Have you got any further with any discussion about relocating them to your deep water facility, for example, or somewhere else?
We will. My own personal opinion is I don't think the gas tanks will ever move. You're stuck with the gas tanks unless they think of something else or unless they stop gas full stop. In relation to the oil tanks will be able to be moved, and I think we'll have the infrastructure in place so that it's going to be a lot cheaper for them to move out to Deepwater Port. It's our intention to put at least one marine gas oil tank out there, ourselves, or with whomever, and at that stage we will have the pipe work and the infrastructure so that they can move that whole depot there. I think they'll have to move it within 10 years maybe. Maybe they might move it bit by bit. But yeah, we'll wait and see. But what we're doing will allow it to be moved. That's one thing. It'll help it to be moved.
See, obviously it depends on funding, but what's the realistic time scale for the
realistic? We genuinely believe we'll have funding for the Deepwater Port sorted before the end of the year.
And then the construction time?
This time next year is what we'd like to start. We genuinely believe that may not happen, so if it slips, it slips. But we'll have everything in place. We'll have a design done. We'll have all the consents in place. Everything will be ready. We'll even go out to pre-qualify contractors and go out to tenders later this year. So if the funding is available at any point this year, we'd like to be able to start next year. Basically, we want it shovel ready. That's the way we're actually looking at it. So it's a big investment for the Port Authority, and we've already invested a lot of money, and the design's costing a lot more money. So by the end of this year, we'll have spent a lot of money on, but you have to have these things ready, and if it's shovel ready, there's no excuse when you put people on the spot, So we will have it ready.
Will you be investing in a tug?
We'd like to, but I think realistically, for the first few years, we're not going to be able to afford something. The way we're actually seeing it is, the ideal thing for us is what they have in Lerwick, which they've got I think it's 25-ton bollard pull tug that doubles up as a pilot boat. So it can go out in quite rough weather as a pilot boat. And that's just enough to give a little bit of a nudge, a wee bit of a push. Big tugs, we're never going to be able to afford it, never. What we hear about in Invergordon, the only vessels that use tugs are the old cruise ships. The modern ones, sometimes it's too much, there are too many issues with communication, too many problems that can go wrong. But I think what we'd like to have is what they have in Lerwick. We 25-ton bollard pull tug that can just do the pilot boat as well, go out in quite rough weather. It's ideally what we want. Not too sure we'll get that, but that's our goal anyway.
What effect will Brexit have on our plans? It's going to be awful.
We've talked to some of the cruise ships about it, and they don't feel that industry will be affected because we've got a lot of foreign tours and cruise ships coming in anyway. Where Brexit could go wrong is with the likes of the fishing industry, because customer base is going to go and they'll put the prawn industry here, which is what keeps the fishing industry going. There could be 20-25% tariffs if there's no deals onto that. However, it's a product that they want. It is a product that we want, but they might be able to get it from elsewhere. At that stage, though, it's a case of finding different markets. So it's a case of quickly finding different markets. Personally, there won't be a no-deal Brexit. That's my own personal opinion. They'll come to some last-minute arrangement. That's what politicians are good at doing. So, but no, who can tell what's going to happen with Brexit? But at the moment, we don't think Brexit is going to have a negative effect on what we're doing here.
I may be going off at a tangent, but what's the score with the oil tanks and the pier in at Holland? Is that out with jurisdiction altogether?
The pier at Holland, we actually think that we've had a wee look at it. We don't believe taking vessels in there. With the weather we have, you're going to be very, very restricted as to when you can access that pier and when you cannot access that pier. I think it might be it'd be quite difficult to move forward with. When, in relation to the oil tanks that are down to the airport, the fuel tanks, the pipework it's finished. It's full of water and it's rusted. A lot of the infrastructure is rusting away. The fenders on the pier at Holland are falling into the water, and the piles there's big holes in them as well. So we actually think that it's beyond economical repair. But even if you were going to spend money on it, would it be feasible to use that to deliver fuel to the island? No, we don't think so.
Is that still within your jurisdiction?
It's within our harbour limits, but we don't own the pier. The airports own the pier. Yeah.
Well, that looks about the end of the questions. So I think the grilling you got from the audience tonight will have prepared you very well for your
no. When you meet some of these people on the mainland, believe me, you've got... There's one scary Italian lady that I am quite nervous about.
I think the audience found your talk and your presentation really interesting, and certainly I found your reference to the port of Stornoway as being an economic driver for the rest of the town and the island has been a real eye-opener. I've really enjoyed your presentation, so I would ask the audience to give you a hearty vote of thanks. Now, before we close completely, can I just say that the final event in the winter series will coincide with the annual general meeting of the Stornoway Historical Society. The annual general meeting will be just a short routine meeting at 6:30 p.m. on the 25th of March, followed by the final lecture at 7 p.m. That will be by Sandy and Malcolm, and it's on a topic as yet unnamed. That's all I can say on the subject. Thanks very much for your attendance.